The beef between Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw and journalist Tucker Carlson just got a lot more serious.
Here's Crenshaw in an interview with GB News yesterday.
Just coming back to this $100 billion to Ukraine, I know that people like Tucker Carlson would make the argument that there's a real opportunity cost there. You know, we could have spent that money on the border or fixing, issues in America. Yeah. What do you make of that argument that all this money could have been spent to help Americans and not Ukrainians?
Well, you can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. We spend 75–80% of our budget on a welfare state in America, on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I would love to ask Tucker what he thinks that $100 billion should be spent on, and if he would vote for it as a conservative. Tucker doesn't know what he's talking about. Tucker likes to visit Moscow and talk about how great the grocery stores are. So I don't really take his advice very seriously.
Then, once the interview was over, this hot mic moment happened.
Have you ever met Tucker?
We've talked a lot on Twitter. If I ever meet him, I'll probably kill him. He's the worst person.
Now, if you couldn't catch that last part of the soundbite, a GB News reporter interviewing Dan Crenshaw tweeted, Crenshaw, quote, told me when I laughed it wasn't a joke. The British outlet later deleted the video.
Carlson responded to these comments, writing on X, "Why don't you come sit for an interview and we'll see how you do. I'll send you my address, Dan Crenshaw."
Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene then chimed in, writing, Dan Crenshaw, did you threaten to kill my friend Tucker Carlson? Crenshaw responded, lol, no. There was a community note added to Crenshaw's tweet that linked to the video of Crenshaw's hot mic moment. Crenshaw and Carlson have a long-standing beef, especially on the Ukraine war issue. In 2024, Tucker posted an episode of his show on X captioning, why do the reddest states produce the dumbest, most liberal Republicans? Why aren't John Cornyn and Dan Crenshaw bagging groceries at Walmart? Jesse Kelly has thoughts about this.
To that tweet, Crenshaw responded on X, why aren't you bagging groceries in Moscow? A reference to Tucker Carlson's trip to Russia, I guess. Carlson had also called Crenshaw Eye Patch McCain in 2022 after Crenshaw voted for more than $40 billion in Ukrainian aid. That nickname, naturally enough, drew some backlash.
Co-chair of the GOP Youth Advisory Council, CJ Pearson, wrote on X, I don't think there's a single politician in America who squandered their opportunity to achieve greatness more than Dan Crenshaw. He ran on changing D.C., but instead let D.C. change him. Sad to see.
Washington Examiner senior writer David Harsanyi wrote, Vance's military service is sacred, but Crenshaw, who joined SEAL Team 3, won a bunch of medals and lost an eye in combat, can be mocked by Tucker and called a traitor.
David was objecting, obviously,
yes,
to that the kind of opprobrium that Dan Crenshaw gets from conservatives. So Crenshaw and Tucker have a long-running feud at this point, a lot of mutual animosity on both sides. While I respect his service, I disagree very heartily with Dan Crenshaw on his foreign policy. I do think there is a tendency in the more neoconservative faction of the Republican Party, of which Dan Crenshaw is a member, to be all too eager to spend money overseas and be pinching pennies at home, and that this is inconsistent, and Tucker Carlson has rightly attacked it. I obviously don't agree with everything Tucker Carlson has ever said, although on foreign policy I'm much closer to his way of thinking, and I'm glad that Trump is more motivated by his ideas rather than Dan Crenshaw's. Now, I don't really, threatening to fight people, or it's just silly, and they shouldn't fight because they're both, well,
is that not how you rule when there are debates in the reason?
I wound with my words.
You do, not with your fist. You're a lover, not a fighter, really, Robby.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, I saw a lot of speculation, it's sort of along the lines of those things with, like, would you rather fight 100 bear-sized rats or one rat-sized bear, that kind of thing. Who would win in a fight, Dan Crenshaw or Tucker Carlson? And even a lot of people who vastly prefer Tucker Carlson should concede that Dan Crenshaw is a much younger man, is a more intimidating physical presence. I have no doubt who would win that fight. Now, Tucker isn't out there claiming that he would, be able to score some knockout blow. Again, he also has succeeded in the realm of political commentary. So, sure. But who would win in a fight is a very juvenile, admittedly fun sort of thought exercise to carry about with.
No, it is fun. I think the answer is pretty clearly Crenshaw. Yeah. But the point about it is that these kind of exchanges, which I sense are becoming more common in political discourse are just, they are a bit juvenile. They are representative, I think, of how all these debates have become kind of more theatrical in some ways, or had a bit more of a sort of WWE kind of
yeah, there was the whole Musk versus Zuckerberg. Remember them when they were going to maybe fight?
They were going to fight.
You would not have wanted to fight Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg does like jiu-jitsu training and surfing. He has gotten in incredibly good. You know, he has this kind of nerd vibe about him that's from kind of a long time. Is out of date now. He's moved from nerd to bro.
And
I would not want to fight him.
A bit pudgy looking these days. So
He's
we
just
also
an older man.
favor Zuckerberg in that matchup.
When you get to be an older man, I feel like I'm an older man now. I'm 36. I don't want to be fighting no people in some street brawls anymore.
Yeah, well,
not that I ever really did.
No, well, it's a fair point. But I do think that the propensity of these things to pop up with more frequency is just kind of representative of where we are. I don't want to be too sanctimonious about it, because it is kind of amusing, but it certainly is not really very salient to the, there's a genuinely important question about what the United States does about Ukraine, which seems to be the fundamental schism from which this has emanated. But anyway, my money
we can solve it like the end of Dune, where Paul Atreides and the Harkonnen kid have to Fade Rotha have to fight to the death, and whoever wins gets to control the fate of the Imperium.
Unlike your usual references to Game of Thrones, that's a reference I actually understand.
Hey, so how about that?
We're making progress here.
Well, we're going to be having some very serious discussion of a nerdy subject, but I think not until tomorrow, about some changes in the Star Wars universe. Big news this morning that you all know I am going to want to weigh in on, but we will get to that tomorrow. In the meantime, that does it for us today on Rising. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while we're on the go, we're now available anywhere you can get podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. See you back here tomorrow.